All right, we're back. It's episode 1. Like,
Yes, it's
yeah,
officially
yeah.
episode 1.
Episode 0 was let's set the table. Episode 0 based on our team of experts working
Our
behind
team
the
of
scenes.
experts?
Yeah, team of experts working behind the scenes. Episode 0 is the chum you throw in the water to
Yeah.
attract the sharks, or the 13 God bless them souls that checked out the first episode. We're getting there. Well,
Mostly like my mom
the
and
0 episode.
your sister.
Your mom
Thanks
watched it
for
9
listening.
times. My sister Jennifer watched it 13
Yeah.
times. We're killing it.
Crushing it.
We're killing it. Women 34 to 62, crushing it.
Yeah. Oh, and my friend Bill. Bill, listen.
Hi, Bill. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this is officially now episode 1, and we're going to go a little bit deeper. We sort of said, why the hell are we here? Why jump into the, the pea soup that is already the podcast community? That's a whole.
Everybody's doing it.
It's a whole nother conversation about people and their limiting beliefs of, well, I could go do that. I could go do this. Like, look at any parallel, any industry, any vertical in any sales division or anything. There's probably more than 3 people doing it. So that begs the question, why do anything? And we talked last week about finding our tribe. And part of that is, making sure that, first and foremost, Erin and I have known each other for quite a bit. And then I've been working in the same company for a few years, and now together in our roles at our company for the last year-ish. Yeah,
it'll
year-ish.
be a year in September.
We've
been teammates. Yeah.
And there's stuff, and this happens to married couples. I mean, we're at the point now, Janina and I, the wife and I, are closing in on 24 years. So there's not too much she doesn't know, which begs the question, why is she still here? Another episode, whole new show, episode 38. I can feel it.
Bring her on and she can tell the story.
Probably not going to give her
unabridged, extra chapters on Timothy.
Maddie and Janina do a takeover and we take the week off.
I feel like Matt wouldn't have that much to say. I'm not that complex.
Janina's got a list. Yep. We used to do this at the holidays. We used to do this at the holidays. So historically, when we would have big family dinners, and my parents still own the house in Chelmsford, and we just lost my dad in March, whole nother show. Not COVID, whole nother show. So we just lost my dad in March, but historically we would have everybody at my parents' house in Chelmsford for holidays. And just making the list comment reminded me, the guy from Christmas Vacation, the old uncle that was angry at everything. This was my great uncle Bobby, who was around.
And that movie, I don't think
he played for me, he was like a maternal grandfather because he just fit that role after I lost my maternal grandfather. Right. And always growing up, when we were ready for dinner, it was somebody was going to say grace, and my father always bestowed that honor upon me. So I'd be about to do it, and my dad one year, Thanksgiving probably, and he's just like, before Timothy says grace, Uncle Bobby has a list of 25 things that piss him off. So I feel like Janina's list of things she'd like to discuss about me might be longer. All that aside,
we could give her 2 episodes.
Yes, and nobody will be back for the cliffhanger.
The
episode 2,
user's guide.
Yeah, we're not back. So, all that aside, we wanted to spend this one going a little bit deeper and just talking about some stuff that you and I admittedly didn't know. I was thinking, because we weren't sure first and foremost we were going to be here. We thought episode 1 officially might be next week, which will now be episode 2, which is pretty cool. And above and beyond that, we are bringing in our good friend Brian Gendron, and he is got a lot going on. It's going to be a really cool conversation about one of our own from here in New Hampshire who has ventured out to start his business in Houston, and he's got a lot of irons and a lot of fires, and that's going to be a great conversation. So we'll expect to see Brian Gendron next week. I was just thinking, as you and I pretty quickly decided, it's almost like when you run a big race or you do any physical endeavor, you're in the race and you're like, this sucks, never doing it again. And as soon as you finish, you're like, when do I register for next year? So
it's kind of like having a baby.
As soon as we finished last week, I thought to myself, we're ready for next week. Because our only concern was, we want to keep the consistency of Wednesdays. Then above and beyond that, we want to just make sure that we are doing, having conversations that are worth. I mean, and here's the thing. All 13 of our listeners are going to love conversation number 2, episode number 1. And I thought we need to start breaking through the crust of like what you and I don't know about each other.
Yeah, could be fun. It's sort of like the reverse dating game because we've been business teammates for a
Yeah.
year now.
Yeah.
So now, yeah, okay.
So in that light, I thought I'm going to ask Erin, and I asked you a few days ago. I'm like, hey, just to shoot. And here's the thing. I mean, it's on the mic flag. We
Yeah.
do a relative amount of show prep. There's not a lot of meat on that bone. We're coming in and we're really soup of the day. There's a lot to talk about. It's 2020. If you're out of topics, you're a boring individual. Like you might be the human representation of a yawn if you have nothing to talk about in 2020,
I mean,
right? Honestly.
there's so many directions you could go with that.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, the conversation opportunities are literally endless.
Endless. Yep. So
Endless.
So
Yeah.
I thought
Yep.
I'm just going to shoot you a text. And I said,
Yeah.
have you ever been fired?
Yeah. Super random.
Now,
Out of nowhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're just landing here for the first time, welcome. This is Unscripted. My name is Tim Lindsay, and Erin McLaughlin
And I'm
is on
Erin
the other side of
McLaughlin.
your screen. And you're thinking, oh, he's definitely been fired. Erin, on the other hand, you just represent that you probably haven't been fired. So I'm intrigued, and it's your turn. Tell your story if you've got one.
So no, I mean, I feel like we've all been fired at one point. Like it's like a rite of passage.
I'm not talking about relationships. I'm talking about work, employment.
So no one's ever broken up with me ever. No,
Oh.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. So this story I'm going to go with, there's a couple stories, but this is really the true absolute one time I've been fired. Was when we were first living in New Hampshire after I went to school in New York and I was certified as a teacher. We moved here and the school year had started. So I'm trying to think like the timing of things. I think it might have been October or November. So I was working as a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in that year, I ended up kind of piecemealing a teaching job together, like cobbled a teaching job together with this tutoring place that I was working. And I think they realized, they're like, oh, she's certified in math and she's certified in history and we're going for our state certification. We'll put her in the books as one of our teachers. So I had this job like as a social worker, and then I would tutor at night at this school. Well, I wasn't actually teaching any classes during the day. Over time, I ended up starting to teach classes during the day. And at one point I was working like 54 hours a week.
Oh.
Yeah. And,
right.
And I kind of was, I mean, I was young and I was like a new teacher and I was just so happy to have a job.
Sure.
And it was a private place. And I was like, so I feel like I'm working a lot of hours. Should I be getting overtime? And that was the first conversation. And then I wasn't yet married and I was perilously close to the like no insurance age.
Sure.
Right? Like I think it's 26 now, but when we were younger, it was what, 22 or 23? You couldn't be on your parents' insurance anymore or something?
Sure.
After graduate school?
If you were still a student, yeah.
Yeah, and I had finished graduate school and so I was very close to being found out that I was like on my parents' insurance. And so anyway, I was like, maybe I should be getting insurance. And I was very passive at that point.
Yep.
And so I don't think he realized how much I was working. And then I was like, I also don't think I can sign the affidavit for the state that I'm an employee here and you could use my license.
Because I'm not. It's like that scene from Seinfeld. Yeah. I don't really work here. That's what makes it so difficult.
Yeah, it was totally that situation. I was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable filling out this paperwork for the state when I just got here and I'm hoping to get a legit teaching job at some point.
So they were like patting the bench with your accreditation, right? Did they need enough accredited teachers? Yeah, they just needed your warm body with your diploma and your accreditation attached to you.
Right.
And yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, I was working and I was working with students, but I wasn't really a part of the school. I wasn't going to staff meetings. I was working like an insane amount of hours.
For not enough money. They were getting you ready to be a teacher. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Teaching
And
boot camp. Yes.
well, and I'm, two of the teachers that I taught with there, are maybe they're even listening because they'll probably be laughing right now at how ridiculous that situation was. So, yeah, and I was like the only one. I was last one in, like totally weird situation, and so I was getting wise to it, and and then I just got a call like on a Friday after school.
Sure.
Got home. It's like 5 o'clock. You don't need to come in on Monday. Wait, what? No, Erin, you don't need to come in on Monday. What do you mean I don't need to come in? Like,
You were the first New Hampshire teacher to work from home. Yeah.
I've been working 50 plus hours a week. Like, what?
Yeah.
And
we're going to distance your employment and your money. Yeah.
I was like, is this? And at the time, like in my mind, I'm like, I think it's because I said I wouldn't sign the state form. Right? Like I don't really know. Ultimately, I never got a reason. Never. There was just, you don't need to come back. You don't need to return. And I still, to this day have no idea really what happened. What I can say though, that was good about it.
They didn't have overtime money. There's my guess, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of things. They didn't want to give me benefits. They didn't have overtime money. There's probably stuff going on with the budget. They didn't have, I don't know if they had staffing permission, like, because they were somewhat funded by the state to have the number of teachers that they had. Like there were a lot of problems, and I was getting wise to them. So I mean, none of them were problems for children. They were paperwork problems, right?
Sure. Yep.
So yeah, so it was just, and then I mean, ultimately I think I still tutored like a couple hours here and there for a while, and then it was just super weird because I was like, I don't want to see the owner. And I was like, yeah, we're done. Like, I'm just not going to come back. But, yeah. So then, but the thing that was good about that, I guess, was I was like a teacher sort of in the end of the school year-ish with still some time left in the school year with no job. And if you're a public school teacher or a teacher at all, to like get a job in May or April, it's not a thing. Like you can't do that. So I started a tutoring business. I had a non-compete with that individual, so I had to start it in another city.
Oh.
And so I mean, he made quite a bit of money when I was tutoring. And then I started a party business. At the same time.
Okay.
And but it was
like bouncy castles and exploding cakes, or what's happening?
It was, and it's like a big, I think it's still a thing now. This was before it was a thing. So it was an art business. Okay. So I actually supplemented the art programs at different private institutions and camps. I did a couple of big camp programs, preschools that wanted to like hire in, and I did everything based on story and literature. And and then I had projects that I did with the kids. I taught them about line and color and shape and all these things around art, and tied it back to literature. And so I did that. I did a big event for the hospital when the two major hospitals in Manchester merged. I did a 4-day event for them with, I don't even know, thousands of people in the city of Manchester. So that was pretty cool. So I mean, I used my connections and I guess what I knew, and I was like, okay, what can I do to make some money?
Sure.
And yeah, so it was a good thing. I guess it sparked that entrepreneurial sense in me. Sure. Because before that I was just like, somebody give me a job.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if that's your horror story, all I'm going to say is that you got, I hate to break it to you, you got laid off. They ran out of money. That's not a fire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it felt like I was getting fired. Like, you don't need to come back.
I wish we had put something on the line before we told our stories, because I think I'm about to win.
Oh, all right. I know, because I don't know this story.
Yeah, it's and yeah, nobody dies. I mean, let's just make sure everybody understands it.
If that's the criteria for winning, I don't know.
Yeah. So backing up a little bit. So before after college, get into radio, and then from I was doing an internship. The internship, I meet my wife, and then we end up moving this way because I was on the air at a station in Portsmouth. They'll remain nameless. The people who know. We're protecting the innocent.
They know who they are.
Yeah, well, trust me. Yeah, I might get salty enough in the next 10 minutes that names start flying around. But anyway, it's really not worth it. So that being said, I'm at a station in Portsmouth here in New Hampshire, and I go at that station. I start in here comes me dating myself. I start in March of 98 and go all the way up. I spent March of 98 to September of 2005 at that station. And in that time span, I go from weekend overnights all the way up to the morning show. So we get to the morning show. And I was there for what they call in the industry a cup of coffee. I was there for a hot second. Grand opening, grand closing. Yeah.
So one episode?
No, not that bad. I think everything I'm about to tell you might shock few people as you get to know us even better. The gift and the curse of my mouth, right? So that's what exits, and for most radio people, obviously that's what exits you from the role typically. Your inability to use it or your ability to overuse it, right? You're either not getting the ratings or you're attracting attention from the wrong people. So yeah, we get to the morning show. I joined a team that had a member that left, and when I go in, we're in the midst of, like, normally, especially in a radio program, everyone would take the week off and they'd run other episodes, or another team would jump in, or the afternoon guy would jump in and do a week of radio. For whatever reason, our female co-host was off. She's on a cruise with her husband. It's myself and my co-host. And we had these things that we would insert into the show because, and especially now we know this, we just joked about it at the top of this show, stuff happens overnight. So as you went through our little, we're going to talk about this, we're going to hit this story, that story, we're going to talk about this. We had something set up. We had somebody calling in, a guest. And then you'd see in our charter, we had little things called ONS, overnight news stories is what I invented. And that was just something that we were going to pull in that could have happened at 4:30 on our drive into the studio. And, again, because we were just like sort of coming out of a break, I looked at him and I'm like, and we were having a quick conversation about him and his car. And I'm like, let's just go with it. So headphones on, mic on, and we start talking. And the evolution of the conversation was that he was getting his car fixed at a dealership. And I went from being the guy on the radio to just Tim. And we started having a really honest conversation. None of this should shock you. And at that same moment, I forgot that at this particular radio station, we were pretty deep on the books with our advertisers were hospitals and dealerships, both new and used cars. So I would always joke,
like I'm afraid about where this is going to happen, even though
nobody dies. So
I know
our radio station was great.
Now.
Our radio station was great if you were sick or bleeding out or you needed a ride. We were the place you listened to because we were going to talk about all the local hospitals and all of the dealerships. So forgetting that 74.5% of our book of business was with car dealerships, and having just an honest conversation with my cohort across the panel from me, we started talking about him getting his car fixed at dealerships. And I'm just like, you brought it to the dealership? He's like, yeah. And I'm asking these questions, unvetted, of course, because the mics are on and who cares? I'm asking because I know the age of his car. I'm like, you still under warranty? And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? Right? Now, all the while, if you're listening right now, you're thinking, oh, this sort of sounds like the Right to Repair Act. Stay tuned, right? And no, I didn't go to the Congress or the State House and petition for that. But that was 20 seconds after all this happens, which, if you don't know what the Right to Repair Act is, it's the fact that you should be able to take any vehicle in any state of warranty and go to any person that has a wrench and a clue, and they should be able to fix your car. It shouldn't be locked down by a code beholden to the dealership or to the brand, right? So we keep going down this path, and I'm just like, oh, I said, well, what makes you go to the dealership? He's like, well, I don't know. He does. And some people just go to a dealership because they go to a dealership. It's
because they're comfortable and habit. Yeah.
Or maybe they have a great relationship. So I just said the infamous words, don't you have a guy? Right. And everybody does now. When you talk about it now, think about any industry. People have their butcher, their baker, their candlestick maker, their hairdresser, their barber. their real estate agent. Everybody's got their person, right? So, and that's where I was coming from. And he's just like, well, yeah. And I start talking at that point. Every vehicle, every station vehicle in our fleet, 4 stations, vans, cars, SUVs, we would send them all, and I'll give these guys credit, to Sullivan Tire at the time. So I said, well, Sullivan Tires, like, we bought them at dealerships, and obviously we were acquiring our vehicles from dealerships all over the seacoast, although we were sending it to Sullivan Tire because they knew us in and out, and it was probably a trade at that point, for advertising, which is completely legal and above board. And I would bring my car over there because half the time on lunch breaks, I'm driving one of the vans over there, and they just knew me. So he's like, oh, and I start, and now the brakes come off, the wheels come off, and I just turn into, Timmy. And I'm like, oh my God, the dealership, like, if I walk in, they charge me an extra $1,000 just for being fat. And I just let it ride. Like, I'm just, and all the mic's on, hot mic. Yeah. So the mic's on, and I'm just having an honest conversation though. Right. So all this being said, we finished the break, shut her down, and we finished the show. And the morning show at the time ran 6 to 10. 10:15, he and I are sitting in our office, and my program director at the time, God bless him, OD, comes over and he's like, hey, you guys got a minute? I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself as we're walking to OD's office, I think I know what this is about, because we did a whole nother bit earlier in the morning about what's the dumbest thing you've done naked. And you can imagine some of the calls we got. And at the time, there were tools that we had to record stuff, but we would let stuff fly unless it was ridiculous. Most of the stuff was pre-recorded. And we ran through this, 7 or 8 people chiming in with the dumbest stuff they've done naked. And one guy said, I used to grill in the nude until I burnt my meat. Double entendre. Thank you. Try the veal. We'll be here all week. Right. So in my head and in my heart, I'm thinking, oh, we heard about the guy burning his meat. I'm going to get yelled at for that. So we sit down. No sooner do we sit down, and that feeling when you're in the 4th grade and you brought home the most delicious report card
I'm
ever.
Anxious now from
you bring home the most delicious report card ever, and your dad pulls in from Raytheon, and you're like, he's about to see all my awful grades. Like, my blood started to run backwards, because no sooner am I sitting down. Remember Will Ferrell in is it Old School? Is it Old School, or is it the one where they go back to being the frat? I forget.
Yeah. Old School. Yep.
No sooner do we sit down, my butt's not even in the chair yet, and OD goes, were you guys talking about car dealerships? And like, my blood just ran backwards, because I wasn't even thinking this is going to be the issue. Guaranteed it's the other thing. Yeah. So I mean,
when does car dealerships win over burnt meat? I mean, really?
That day. And as my life or my radio career at the station is flashing before my eyes, I'm thinking, I've said such ridiculous crap on the station. Really, really fast, right? That never led to this. Doing the weather all the time. I almost sang the jingle. I don't want to do that. Well, most of my friends know where I worked. We had a little jingle, and it was like, and it would literally sing Seacoast weather. And I would get on and I'd be like, blah, blah, this, and this is over the winter, right? And I'd be like, you know what? Little snow over tonight, just a dusting. Don't worry about it. 2 to 3 inches. My wife deals with it all the time. And I'd go, 62 degrees in Portsmouth, and right back into the music, right? And OD would come and be like, what are you doing? Because I slipped in that quick little one-liner. All that stuff never got me in trouble, because you truly don't get in trouble unless somebody calls the FCC, which wasn't the case here, or if clearly a client calls the general manager and says, what were they talking about this morning? So, so we're back on the air the next day. It was a Wednesday, and we're finishing that show. And I know my general manager is getting back from a conference. And I'm thinking it's probably not going to go well today. Right. Today, I feel like today's going to be different than yesterday. So we're signing off. And I remember saying, blah, blah, blah. And I would always say, see you tomorrow. And I just said goodbye, because I knew in my heart of hearts, I could feel it. Yeah. So we get off the air. I got suspended Thursday off the air. He was off the air. They threw somebody else in the morning show, and then they did the same thing on Friday. And I was called Thursday night. Can you be in here Friday at 10:15? Anytime they ask you, if you're a morning guy, they ask you to come in after your show is over on Friday. It's not, This is like the adventure book, turn to page 22. If you want Timmy to fall down the well, I fell down the well that day. So let me say this concerning that. There's not a piece of me that went home and slept in the fetal position. I never felt bad about what I said. I never truly regretted what I said. This all ended so well, which sounds really weird. Like, after this happens, this is almost back to Kramer getting fired.
Yeah.
Like I'm leaving the office. I'm at one point standing outside the morning show office telling OD, my program director, and our general manager at the time, he'll remain nameless because
Yeah, that's
I want to
fine.
Khaleesi. I want to burn his King's Landing to the ground at some point in my life. No, I didn't say that. I did. Anyway, yeah, it's fine. And we're standing in the hallway and we're just having this super chill conversation. I'm like, well, guys, I'm going to grab a couple things now. I'll come back over the weekend for the rest. They knew it wasn't going to go horribly wrong. I'm not going to run back in on Saturday and start screaming my head off. Like it was what it was.
Set the place on fire.
And I hadn't really processed everything. So that was good. Now my cohort is coming in as I'm leaving. We'll get to that in a second. This is where my love for Boston College football comes in. This is when BC football, or BC in general, was joining the Athletic Coast Conference, the ACC. And I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to go to the game on Saturday because they want me to go do some remote. And now my first thought is, I don't have to go to that stupid remote. So I turned around and said to OD, I'm like, you know what the blessing of all this is? He's like, what? I'm like, I can go to the BC game Saturday. And he just shakes his head like he's like, I just took it in stride. I'll never regret saying that.
What else are you going to do?
It wasn't maniacal. It wasn't maniacal. And what this came down to in the course of a few days, some kid, and I won't mention dealership names, Exeter, right at the corner of 125 and 101. Some kid that works at that dealership that starts with a T and ends with an Oda. He walked in and just said, "Did you hear what they were just saying?" So the powers that be didn't even hear it. Some person that works at the dealership did, walked in. That started, enough people asked around and then talked to other dealerships. And whether people heard it or not, this one person at this one dealership got a bunch of people in 125 and just in our book of business to come from my head. Now, the lesson there is if you have the right general manager, and at the time I didn't, that's why I decided not to use his name earlier. The right general manager at that time, and this is September of 2005. And I mean, when I say this, I mean the general manager we had prior, and my friends will know who I'm talking about. The general manager prior to the current general manager at the time would have said, listen, we're going to get you some Red Sox tickets. You're going to get a limo. You're going to get some girls with moral compasses that might be off kilter. We're going to send you down in the limo. We're going to make sure all these people have a really good time. And by the time it gets back, everybody's going to be in we're going to take these guys out and these girls out and show them a good time. And you're going to host it. And it's all like that. Something like that would have taken place only for the fact that I've heard stories like that take place.
Right.
This was very cut and dried. All things considered, I truly believe that there was always a decision already sort of made in the ether that they wanted a different show. They wanted to bring me in, but they wanted different people on the other side of the table from me. And I chose to stick with the party that was there because I felt grateful that I was allowed to join it.
Right.
That was a little bit to do with it. That wasn't the case. General manager at the time had no spine. The director of sales at the time had no spine. She knows who she is. She still works in town. How you doing? And oh yeah, she's a pleasure. And when that all happened, so from there I went and I jumped into, this is where it gets quirky. I go from there, my friend, and at that point, we have Aiden. Cameron is about to be on the way. The next day, Janina tells me she's pregnant with Cameron. The next day.
Oh, that's rough.
Yep. It was fun, good stuff, good times. And so I jump in and I am working at GameStop for 12 seconds just to keep my head on straight. And yeah, I was there. Somebody found me. Somebody came in from behind GameStop over on Woodbury, behind like Market Basket and stuff in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. There's a place called Direct Capital. Somebody from Direct Capital came in. They recruited me. I went and did sales there for 12 seconds. And left before 60 Minutes showed up. And then nobody showed up, but I felt like they were going to. And then I go to PC Connection. Like I then went to PC Connection, now called Connection, which is the tech company.
Yeah.
Where our friend from next week, who you're going to meet, Brian Gendron, got his start in the tech industry and did his first 12 to 15 years in tech before he goes to Houston and starts his company that we'll talk about next week.
How long were you there?
I was at both of those for months. For like handful of months, because at the same time, I also went up at this point. My good friend Corey got me up the street at what was then WRED, which was at 95.9 at that point, a hip hop station. Much to your point, they brought me in and they're like, sure, we'd love to have you do. So I was going in to fill in some nights and late nights and maybe do some overnights. They didn't have any money.
Right.
Same thing happened where they're just like, yeah, so here's the tough part about payday. We loved having you Monday through Friday, but I keep sliding the beads on the abacus, and it still just doesn't add up.
Yeah. So what is your volunteer
Yeah.
salary?
Well, but the breeding there is I was, my entire internship down in Boston. I'll mention that name because they're phenomenal. I was blessed to be able to do my internship at Kiss 108 in Boston. And there is where, and this creates this entire path to this episode, quite honestly, right? I mean, everything does, but truly, it's there that I meet Janina. And then I come up to the cluster here in Portsmouth, and I mean radio cluster, not cluster like people would say it's a cluster. Yeah. It is, and it's not. And that's where I meet our good friend Nathan, who owns our current company, right? So it was all a path to get to these people who became a wealth determiner in my life, and obviously the backbone of our family, right? My wife tolerates me and our two boys, and that's a full-time job, right? Yes. So it was that all of that was just a pathway to get me to where I was supposed to be, which is crazy. And I'm truly not. I know it sounds like, dude, you're on the morning show and you got fired for saying Sullivan Tire. There's a lot more moving parts to that, but I'll never feel bad. Honestly, a month later or so, Janina and I are with my parents out to dinner, and Cheryl, with respect, we call her Cheryl the Pearl. Cheryl's sitting across from Janina. I'm sitting across from my dad, and my dad hears these two guys at the next table talking about the right to repair bill, which it wasn't that yet, but the guy was bitching about the fact that he had to go back to the dealership to get this one little thing because they had the code and his mechanic couldn't get it open, couldn't read the computer. And my dad's just like, that's why you got fired? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, pass the salt. Like, he was just like, so, and I mean, whether he was upset with me or not, there was no emotion. He's an Irish Catholic Vietnam vet. It was just like, the screen was on pause quite a bit. So but that's what it was. That's my good fired story. Now, my good friend Chad, who's still in the industry doing voice work, he would argue that you're not really in radio until you get fired. So, because most of my friends, I've got friends who were just, like the swinging door of radio is a tough ride. And I knew in that moment that I was not, because, you could at that point say, okay, I'm throwing my didn't even know yet pregnant wife, our oldest son, in a U-Haul, and we're going to drive around looking for my next opportunity. Right. And that's what a lot of people do. And I respect that. And people that are in radio, that should be in radio, that have great game, it's awesome. Right. And I knew in my heart of hearts, it's going to be pretty soon, because Seacrest was becoming Seacrest. It's going to be Seacrest and Howard. And that's where we sort of live right now, outside of, I've got good friends and great, great, great gigs around the country. But other than that, it's slim pickings. You're getting paid dog meat, and they're beating the hell out of you to have you do a whole bunch of different things. I end up back at that cluster doing overnights for the station down the hallway from 2006 to 2009. And then at that point, the company used to be called, I won't say, there's a heart in their logo now. They had a 3,000 person bloodletting in late April of 2009. And then I got re-released.
Re-released.
Yeah. And that point in 2005, when I lose the morning show, there's not a piece of me that's going to start to chase radio around the world. And then when the final 2009 let go, I'm just like, okay. And at that point, I was doing some coaching at a company in Portsmouth and a few different areas around New Hampshire, and then running into Nate, and he's like, come over here and yell at these people. And here we are. So
and here we are.
Because he escaped radio. He'll remind you he escaped radio in due time. I kept telling you to leave. I kept telling you to leave.
It was too good. Well, but that brings us back to this whole idea. And you can actually see I have like the little sign I have over fail often, fail fast, fail forward. Mm-hmm. And like, I think just as a teacher, I'm so comfortable with like failing at things because I know that I can get better. Right. And everything's an opportunity. But when I wish I had known that when I was younger. Right, because it didn't feel that way when it happened, I'm sure. And I can remember, like Matt and I were not yet married, and we had rent to pay, and I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, and I also, like, not only did I start two businesses, I also worked retail. I worked at the mall, like selling clothes, and I worked at a music box store. I mean, like, I worked, if there was work to be done, I was just going to go do it. But at the time I felt like such a loser, like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? Right.
Yep.
Like, and then I look at like my husband, he's a recruiter, right? So, but he generally likes to be in contracts, and so contracts don't last forever, right? Like, so I'm like, he's like a professional at getting fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your contract's just done. And he's like, all right, cool. And he's like always on the hunt for like that next thing.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of years, so I'm used to it now. But when we were first married, I was like, what do you mean they're ending your contract? Like, he's like, it's okay, I'll get another one. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So it's just like sort of your mindset around it. Like, there's plenty of work out there. I'll go find something to do. But yeah,
and I guess for me, because you talk about when you had 15 side hustles that equaled one sort of hustle, right?
Sort of a job.
There was a
barely enough.
There was a point in time, and it was only due to proximity. So I grew up in Chelmsford, Mass. Of course, Janina is a transplant. She's from just outside of Sydney, Australia, Engadine, Australia. And she's over here. We are married at this point, and there was one point where I am doing my day job. She'll correct me later. And she sells those shirts, by the way. He was wrong again.com.
Yeah.
She bought the domain. She already owns it. I'm working a day job at a tech company in like the R&D lab, like literally soldering parts onto the back of boards during the day, listening to Howard. Then I would leave there to go to ERZ and do my show, and then just gave the name out. And then from there, I would slipped out.
Whoops.
Sorry. Well, the irony is the day job was called Electronic Retailing Systems. So I used to leave my day job at a tech firm that was called ERS, and then come up to the call letters of ER. It was it was a lot going on. And then I would answer the phone at the day job and say the call letters from the radio station. So between all this time,
keep it straight, right?
It was crazy. I was doing that during the day, which was paying the bills. Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah, that was literally supporting the habit of, or I should say the hobby of real estate. So between there, it was either come up to Portsmouth to do a radio show, go into KISS because I was playing with the big boys there, and just keep learning. That entire time was unpaid internship stuff. And then there was some part-time stuff that I was getting paid for. But that was just 4 years of, are you willing to? And this is what's not happening now. Here comes Grandpa Lindsay. There's what's not happening now. Kids aren't willing to say, you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm going to heat up a bag of nickels and smash myself in the face and just go learn a trade, learn a job, learn an industry. And I think that's going to come full circle now with what we're heading into with everything going on in our country. And the other little tiny thing that was also happening, and this was not much money, it was just super close to where the wife and I lived, a great little tiny station in Lowell. And I would go in during a night, syndicated night talk show. And all I was doing was running the carts, which looked like 8-track tapes, which if you don't know what I mean, ask your great grandparents. And they were with carts, and everything's computerized now, carts where I would just throw in, and it was so underfunded there that the owner, God bless him, would say, listen, just here, obviously, I think it was Tom Likas was the show that I was running the board for. When Tom finishes, obviously you can see here, Tim, you've got a four-minute break to fill. And you'll notice we don't have any ads sold. No ads sold. I was just going out and I would play my favorite Sanka commercial.
Oh my God.
Ford commercial. So I knew, I'm like, I need 4 minutes. Oh, I'll play my favorites. I was playing my favorite commercials because we didn't even have a traffic department that was telling us what commercials to play because they weren't really selling that many ads. But I was going in, getting a few dollars and just staying in the game. And if that job served nothing else for me, working at that tiny station in Lowell, Mass was reminding me I don't want to be doing this for long.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in the game.
I'm ready for something else.
Yeah. This was like being at Caddyshack and I'm cleaning cleats. And being being at KISS 108 in Boston was I get to tell the professional what club they should grab. Because I got input and I got to the point where I was an in-studio intern, which was a big thing then. And then God bless my friend at the time, Chris, who we call Bobby Dugan, another long story. None of my friends have real names. It's to protect the innocent. He's like, at the time, he's assistant program director in Portsmouth. And he's like, we might have something for you. And that pulls me up here. It's insanity.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. On my way into the office this morning, I passed a car. I think it was a Cadillac. I'm not sure. And the license plate was Think and Grow.
Yeah.
And I was like, like that we all need to just kind of take that mindset, right? Like, it's even with these setbacks, and totally 2020 is a total setback. Okay. Yeah. Like there's a lot about this year that feels like I got fired.
Jesus called. He thanked you for your service. Yeah, literally. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. You don't need to come back tomorrow. Yeah. You don't need to do this. You don't need to go to school.
It's Jonathan Lipnicki, 1996, Jerry Maguire. Go ahead and go. Go ahead and go. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But it's funny when you texted me, like, have you ever been fired? And I was like, I mean, a long time ago.
You got laid off. You got laid off.
No, I mean, it felt like firing at the time.
I know.
It was awful.
Yes, everybody has their degree of rejection, right?
Yeah, it's my trauma.
Yeah, and ironically, we go to the ACC kickoff game against Florida State. Got lit up. Nobody should be shocked by that. Yeah, and I was there. And,
yeah, but you were there to see it.
Well, that plays right back into another thing that was just more important than doing whatever. I actually think I know what it was for. It was for a relatively good cause, and I still didn't have to do it, so we won't go down that road. That aside, it was one more BC game I got to be with my dad.
Yeah.
And now that he's gone, yeah, end of story. It was worth it. So I got fired, so I go to one more game with Richard. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
All that being said, we are going to have Brian Gendron here next week. If you feel right now, because you're working from home, you're still in your comfy pants, you haven't started that nutritional plan you want, you feel like you're underutilizing your God-given talents, we're going to exacerbate that for you next week. He is firing on all cylinders. If nothing else, he will inspire you to change something by the end of next week's episode. A phenomenal talent, a great friend of ours, and you will absolutely pull 3 nuggets out of next week's episode with Brian Gendron. So we look forward to seeing him. We want to remind you, as we grow these conversations and we continue to bring people in, we've got Brian Gendron coming in, our good friend out in Houston. It'll be next week. We're going to have our friend, the runner. What's her name? Kate, the runner, right? Run Like a Girl. Yep. She's coming. We've got your friend who's got the restaurant. We're going to bring in my friend Chris soon, who is a physiologist and a sports coach. All these conversations are coming in, and what's going to be, different about each one of them is clearly they're all different, that they are following their passion, that they are doing what they want to do. Because we can joke about the fact, because I have a lot of people say, don't you miss radio? I miss what it was, and the irony is now it's come full circle, right? Like I'm now back in a role doing this kind of stuff on a regular basis just because of the proximity of the people at our company that you and I work with. Most of them are working from home or have the ability to do what they do remotely. So
yeah, I mean, we have an internal show that we do every single day.
So I sort of want it back anyway. So I really don't miss
manifested it.
But to the point of, like we joked about the other week about how Billy Corey and Adam and I were doing that other thing as we knew radio was coming to a screaming halt for us, and it was just the industry was changing, and we wanted to do what we wanted to talk about and have the freedom to do that, not just talk a 30-second record to a post. We get to do that again here. So you're going to hear about people really leaning into their passions, and some of them who have been able to build it up and step away from and go in and have that glorious moment where they give their notice. Actually, I just thought of another person I want to talk to. I've got a friend who started a brewery in Western Mass, and it's called 2-Week Notice.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, there's so many great stories that we want to share with you. So if you have somebody that you think we need to talk to and they'd be willing to join us here, obviously in a Zoom format till further notice, you can grab our email. It's unscripted, the show gmail.com, and just send us a quick note with their contact info. We can reach out to them and take it from there. And we appreciate you guys listening. We'd love for you to subscribe. We'd love for you to like this episode. And then above and beyond that, if there's people that you know that this would speak to as well, please share it with them.
Yes, share.
The more people we can get involved in this conversation, that's really what we want to do. We're both, well, you shot home. I'm still at my office in Portsmouth. In the grand scheme of things,
this is the home office.
This is a passion project for us.
Yes.
There's no intentionality. Like we're gonna get 40 likes and we're gonna be millionaires. Like, all the good shows actually are getting demonetized by YouTube. I have another friend I want to bring in and talk about that.
Oh, okay.
That's a thing. That's a thing that can happen. That's a thing that can happen. Yeah, you can get demonetized.
Because you're
here's the problem.
Too much money away.
We have to get monetized first.
I mean, I really think we just need to have this space to have conversations, and and whatever is going to happen is going to happen.
Right.
And that like peace out moment that that's why I'm here. So.
Because we're losing our minds. Yeah. It's fine. Maybe we'll change the show. Yeah. I thought it was called Unscripted. No, we're losing our minds. They switched it last week, right at the very end. You might not have caught it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So please, again, subscribe, like the episode, share with your friends. And if you've got somebody we need to talk to, it's unscriptedtheshow@gmail.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday night with the Brian Gendron.
Whoop,
whoop. Take care. Bye.
Bye.